I want to bring in Misty and Andy to talk about this. Misty, as you have prosecutors trying to convince the judge that this person, who at this point so far is facing limited charges, should remain behind bars as legal proceedings continue, how difficult a process do they have when it comes to that?
Prosecutors in this case, according to this detention memo that we saw, this is a case that's going to be more favorable to the prosecutors with respect to holding him. The reason being, what we're looking at in a detention hearing and what a judge is going to take into consideration falls really into two categories. One, is this person a flight risk? Well, we've learned from this memo that he was found with passports, travel documents, he was searching a path to Mexico, and he had already fled the scene right from the get-go. So as far as being a flight risk, there's a lot to add with respect to that argument. And then the other component, is this person a danger? And they're going to be looking at the fact that he had these guns. He was in possession of them illegally. Also, the letter that we saw, the fact that he's calling for basically a bounty if he was unsuccessful, that this was premeditated, that he was lying in wait. All of that is going to go into that bucket of whether he's a danger. And to Caitlin, she brings up a great point. There hasn't been a grand jury indictment yet. And what I think is happening right now, he's being held on a criminal complaint with respect to these gun charges. You're likely to see the indictment include more than just the gun charges, perhaps the federal crime of assassination attempt of a major political candidate. So a lot of moving parts, and that's likely why this hearing is a bit more extensive than we usually see at the bail part of the case.
And Andy, we also learned a few more details. We'd already known some about how events played out on the day of September 15th on the golf course, but prosecutors revealed that Ruth had this direct line on the 6th hole green, which was the next hole that Trump would have played, presumably would have been standing still at some point doing that to putt. He had, Ruth, a list of these dates and venues that Caitlin was detailing where Trump was expected to appear in the lead up to the presidential election. How does that go towards more potential charges?
Well, Brianna, so their challenge, today's challenge, of course, as Misty laid out, is to keep him locked up. And for all the reasons she mentioned, I think they'll be successful in that effort. The longer term issue is, what are they going to charge him with beyond these two firearms offenses? Excuse me. They certainly want to get to an attempted assassination charge. It's a little bit challenging under the federal code because he wasn't the president at the time. So there's sort of different laws that you have to look to there. But all the evidence you mentioned goes directly to intent. They have to show that his intent that day was to actually assassinate former President Trump. He didn't take any specific actions. He didn't fire a shot and miss or try to attack him or something like that. So they have a little bit of a hurdle to get over there. The letter will be really devastating evidence against Ruth in that regard. I think also of interest is the fact that we now know he was in the area for a month and was seen, of course, near Mar-a-Lago, which is the president's residence, and other places in the area. This goes to answering those questions we had on day one about how did he know to be in that place at that time. And many of us suspected he probably knew it from doing very rudimentary surveillance. It's not a hard thing to figure out. The president is very predictable in his movements and going to his golf clubs at the same time on Sundays when he's in town. So that picture, I think, is really starting to come together for prosecutors as well. And it answers the question to some extent as to whether or not he had any help with that intelligence. At this point, the answer looks like no.
Yeah, Misty, how damning is that cell phone data to show where he was? This is something that comes up in court. It's not exactly precise, but it can be very much illuminating as to someone's approximate whereabouts.
Absolutely. It's going to be a large part of the case because, as was just stated, it's all about establishing intent when we're talking about charges that go beyond the firearms felony charges he's currently facing. So to the extent we're getting to an attempted assassination, you don't get off the hook just because you fail to follow through and actually commit the crime. But an attempt crime, because it's unsuccessful, has legal challenges to prove that intent factor. And that cell phone data, the fact that this was pre-planned, those are going to be the allegations. And what happens is all of that goes before a jury, and a jury is asked to use their common sense and look at the totality of the evidence. So the cell phone records, the letter, and just the actions of Ruth that day, all of that is going to be in furtherance of establishing that intent element from the prosecutor's perspective.
And Andy, I wonder, have you seen anything to indicate that Ruth should have been on law enforcement's radar before the assassination attempt as some kind of risk to the president?
You know, Brianna, in the information that we have publicly, I don't believe there's anything that really jumps out to say the Secret Service or the FBI or law enforcement in general kind of missed an opportunity to head this off. Now, again, we don't know all of the evidence that they have. Maybe that exists and it's just not been disclosed yet. There's no question he was a dangerous individual. His run-ins with law enforcement, I believe in North Carolina, where he fled from a traffic stop and ultimately took a felony charge for possession of a weapon of mass destruction, an explosive device. I mean, clearly an unbalanced and dangerous person. He pretty much dropped off the radar at that point by moving to Hawaii. It's not clear, even though he was fairly visible in his support for Ukraine and his travel over there, none of that is illegal. None of that is aggression directed at a president or a political figure. So at this point, I don't think we have enough information to say that a ball was dropped here, but it'll be interesting to find out the full extent of what the government knows as this case goes forward.
All right, Misty, Andy, thank you so much to both of you. We do appreciate it.